Hello, this is George Sandman. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. And Growth Drive is a system used by business advisors to drive client profits, growth, and value. Now, we're also a community. Every week we get together to talk about all things business advisor, everything clients, cases, things we're seeing out in the world. Now, tune in here to this podcast, and you can join the conversation by scanning this QR code, passcode 867-5309. Jump into the conversation. Everyone's welcome. We're looking forward to having you. So here we go. On with the show.
Morning, Ed.
Hey, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good. Wow, this is I'm not usually the first one on.
Well, you know how it is. George is traveling, so you never know.
Yeah, exactly. Morning, Chip.
At least they have one Atlanta person heard from.
Yeah.
I assume you're filling in for Mr. Sandman.
Yeah.
Are you?
I don't know that that he asked me officially, but
Oh, really? Okay, because I thought he
well-
was. I heard he was hiking with his sons in Colorado, but
yeah, I knew he was out in Denver, and I didn't know when he was getting back. I assumed this was the whole week or whatever. I actually texted him yesterday,
and I doubt if they would be hiking at this hour of the morning at 7:00. So
they're still recovering from drinking last night.
Knowing him, he might be here. Well, as you say, last night might be still hanging in.
Yeah. Morning, Paul.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning,
Good to
Paul.
see all of you.
Yeah, is the sun up in Oregon yet?
Yes, barely.
I would say we are
yes.
black as can be here in Columbus. We've had so much rain in the last week. Our golf course closed this morning at 7:00. It's been flooding.
We are finally getting some more rain, but we haven't had to close the course yet. But we did, like in July, we had 5 inches of rain one day, and they closed it for actually a day and a half.
Sure. Well, our course has been wet, and I played on Sunday at a fundraising event, and it was way on the west side of town, about 20 miles away from me. It's still in Columbus.
Yeah.
Our course was as dry as a rock.
Yeah, right.
We drove everywhere, and so it's like, it depends on where you happen to be, but for some reason, the northern half of Columbus and going towards Cleveland, we have gotten so much water, it's wild.
Yeah, you guys get the same problem or the same effect that we do, which is the lake plays in, big lake
absolutely
plays into the effects of the weather. Morning, Wayne.
Good morning.
You're looking very black and white today.
It's kind of a gray day out here in Arizona.
Yeah. I see that. So what's new on anybody's plate? Paul, you always have something interesting to talk about.
Well,
tip?
I think it was our friend Mr. Garrison that mentioned a book called The Frame Making Sale weeks ago.
Yep.
I had read The Challenger Sale early on after I started consulting, which I really liked coming out of the business world. Daimler Truck, that was really consistent with my experience. And I recognized in that process that I was the internal fox a couple of times, and some salespeople from suppliers were using me quite effectively, I learned by reading that. I started the frame making sale, and I see it's got some really good things in it for business to business sales. And I think there's some things in there that could work for what we're doing as well, in terms of if you're doing a clarity team review kind of thing, you're somewhat doing what should be happening in the frame making sale. I think you have to adapt it a little bit to understand how to apply it, but I think it's got some good stuff. I've got about 30 pages left to finish it. I'll get that done today, and I'm going to do a blog on it, and I'll make a audio video recording for my podcast with it as well. So
Sweet.
interesting stuff.
Nice. And I got out of that you see good chunks of it that you can apply in your practice.
Well, yes, because no matter who you are, small, big, or what you're doing, sales is a problem for every business I know of.
Yeah, it's a problem or an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity that we have to are we thinking, I wouldn't want to put words into Mike's mouth, but Mike Garrison's mouth, but are we thinking, are we just thinking in our little job that we perceive ourselves in, or are we thinking with a sales hat on of what the next thing is, right? Each step that we do ought to be leading to another step, another opportunity, right? And
So,
if we're thinking like that, then we have that sales hat on.
yeah, for me, since I deal with on a paid basis, I deal with everybody that is business to business, and a lot of the suppliers are trying to get into the big OEMs that I used to work at and stuff. So it absolutely applies. And if I can help those people and direct them, here's where you need to go with what you're doing there. But try thinking about why Mike Garrison would pick it up and how he would be applying that with selling to wealth planners. I'll have to ask him sometime. Maybe I'll reach out to him directly to figure that one out, because it takes some figuring out to figure out how you're going to apply what they're doing there to selling to a wealth planner, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, not only are people, the buckets of people by their function interesting and different from a sales perspective, but we know this, every individual is different, right? Their experience is different. And so, if you're doing it right, you're figuring out the individual. Morning, John, by the way. If I'm selling to John, I'm selling differently than I'm selling to you, Paul, right? Like there's different things.
It took me years to understand why salespeople always rose to the top in the corporate world, and I better understand it now because of that. They are better at reading people and adapting to people than certainly a quality control person who says this is the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think, Paul, I'll take advantage of that and say, I think that's what you see in many accounting departments in corporate world. People are so structured in the way they act and do and think, they're hard to be innovators. And so when someone says, well, give me a KPI that we should be thinking about in blankety blank, and they look back at the person and said, that's not my job.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit in my little box. Yeah.
I mean, I look at how many KPIs I've learned and picked up in service companies over the years, and just every time I work with them, I find some new one I want to add. And the thing is, if you're not letting yourself be trapped by structure, you can see good applications and interaction of KPIs, that one KPI guides you to another more improved KPI. And then if you blend them with a third one, now you've got a trio that's really delivering information timely and not something, a year ago, it's not this year's accounting, this year's balance sheet is better than last year's balance sheet. So who cares?
Yeah.
From a business perspective, if you're a publicly held company, well, we make a lot to do about that. But I think for the businesses that we're not dealing with that situation. And they're more concerned with, how do I keep working on getting more effective and efficient information so I can make better decisions?
Yeah. And Ed, I think you make a great point. I think most of us, right, and now I'm being broad society, we have so much information coming at us that we need to sort of group things, bucket things into general buckets just to be able to deal with the volume that we're having. And so, Paul, your observation that salespeople are better at individualizing, they have to overcome that natural tendency that we all have to generalize or bucket things, because that's how we deal with excessive information, right? And so it really is a skill set. Some of it is natural for them, for us, them, right? But some of it is a decision and a practice of doing that and personalizing, right? And if you don't use that skill, it's not just something you can pick up and do perfectly. It's a little bit like golf, right? You don't just jump on the golf course and become a scratch golfer. Everybody I know started out, being a terrible golfer and worked their way up, right? Kip,
So
you're nodding your head.
remember a couple of weeks ago, then Joseph gave us a nice framework for equity and incentive payment for everybody. So the other thing that I run into, and this book made me think a little bit more about as well, is how do you compensate salespeople? I've had too many organizations I've dealt with where the salespeople are on salary, no incentive. And then there are those, yeah, right. You'd never do that. There's got to be a substantial
You're attracting the
portion.
wrong people when you do that.
Correct.
Yeah. But there's still the issue of a salesperson will not care about the next sale, will not care about how well the person uses the product. So say you're getting a new ERP system. A new ERP system takes years to sell and takes years to implement. And if you reward the salesperson on making the first order and not keeping the customer happy, you may be making a mistake in what you need to do. So the whole part of frame making is making your customer successful and confident in the decision they made. So one of the things that I see some companies do is they will have a 5-year payout to the salesperson, and it decreases each year as to what the percentage is. So there's a lot of art and science to how to compensate salespeople. And if somebody like Joe out there could give us a nice little framework for it, that'd be great.
Well, it's also, Paul, I think there's an interesting dilemma in there as well. And I struggle with this in some areas, right? Salespeople have that, they want to get the sale. They're not necessarily interested in the tail of all the things that happen beyond it. True salespeople are interested in getting
the hunter versus the farmer. Yes.
Correct. And so, there are people who are good at both, less people really good at both. But a question I always ask is, when I go into an organization, should we expect the salespeople to be good at being a really good hunter and being a great farmer as well? And so, do we want to split that? Do we have a customer service group that takes care of keeping the customer happy once they're won, a relationship manager, some sort of person who's good at farming, and the salesperson hunts, right? And they're incented differently. The salesperson is incented to get the sale in and go to the next sale, and the farmer is incented to have the customer be happy over time.
It's a tremendous art to figure that one out.
It absolutely is.
But having a farmer, I'm sorry, having a hunter be a farmer is very unlikely. But expecting that the salesperson as a hunter gets paid immediately, my experience has been salespeople will sell what doesn't exist to make the sale, and then that leaves the rest of the organization treading water and drowning, trying to figure out how to keep that customer happy. And the sales guy, the hunter, he often I see they last 2 years because they've hit every incentive they can. Time to go on to the next company.
Yeah, correct. And yeah, there needs to be some tail for those reasons. The other thing that we often advise on in general, these are generalisms now, pay on margin, not on revenue.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because we
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
good
Oh, absolutely.
deals, not just
Yes.
anything that's walking down the street, right? And pay when you're paid. Commissions come when you collect from a sale, not when you make the sale. So the sale has to happen and the customer has to pay for it. Then the commission gets paid.
And the thing that I've seen too is that they give you 60% of the commission when it's collected, and you get 40% 6 months thereafter.
Yeah, right. That's that tail part. Yep.
That I think that kind of a tail little activity, because it forces them to have a customer service mentality, but they don't need to spend all the time because
Right.
if they made a good sale, it'll be effectively implemented. If it's a weak sale, they're going to have to put a lot of time in to not lose the sale afterwards.
Yeah, and it's easy to talk about a transactional sale, guys. Something that you sell once. I sell you $1 million machine and I sold it to you and the transaction's over. It's harder to talk about I sold you on working with a services company and you're going to be working with us for the next 5 to 10 years. How do you
Right.
pay out that commission, right? And my answer as I look at our firm is you get 100% of the first year's commission, Paul, to your point, but it's a declining commission because I'm paying for the sale, not for the ongoing. I want you to stay interested, but I want you to go out and get more sales. So if I keep paying you, if you sell a 5-year thing that just, you can sit back in your lawn chair and say, I'm just going to collect my 5 years of 100% commission. I want you to keep going in the sales component, right? And so there has to be incentivizing it in the right way and getting all those dialed in is a challenging thing. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I've seen several models that tend to work pretty well.
I've yet to hear of a book that covers all the different options and what's best, and seen any surveys of how they're being paid and things. So a lot to learn there.
It's so situational. I think the answer would be you got to look at each situation and tweak it a little bit, right? The best sales compensation I've seen is when people really understand the dynamics of that particular sales environment and the person, and they design a custom sales compensation to them. Tip, I want to jump over because you've been nodding your head a lot on this. I know you have some comments. Jump in.
Yeah. Well, in grad school, I took 3 semesters of compensation. So it's,
wow.
it was, along with research methods and labor law, that was like, those were the 3 biggies. And, here's what I'm really struck by when I interact with clients around compensation. It's funny we're talking about this because I'm actually doing a special half day with a client on Thursday about this, Thursday morning, is I don't know about you all, but 90% of them are not clear about what they want.
Yeah.
Right? So like they don't know what they want. There's all kinds of things, but they're not clear about what they want in terms of the outcome for their revenue. They're not able to tell you what good revenue is versus what bad revenue is.
Yeah.
They're afraid, and I appreciate this, but they're afraid to pay on gross margin because they don't want to pay on gross margin because that's basically trade secrets as to how they formulate their pricing. There's all kinds of different factors that play into this. The one that occurred to me, the reason I was nodding when Paul was talking about this is like, he was talking about something that I just was smiling like, yeah, that's the sales cycle. Like, how do you compensate somebody on selling an ERP system when the sales cycle might be 3 years? And I had a case, or was talking to a colleague about this, that she has a client who in the last 2.5 years has gone through 4 chief revenue officers. And I asked her, I said, well, how long's the sales cycle? And she told me it's about 6 months. I said, well, then they're doomed from the outset, right? So all that stuff plays into how you're going to design your compensation model. I think what Ed just shared about the trailing piece, 60% at payment and 40% to see them maybe through the onboarding process is very interesting. But I think that's why, there's so many different, I don't think there ever will be a sweet spot compensation model. The other thing about the thing with salespeople is that somehow you got to factor in what you really, really want. That's activity. Now you want the right kind of activity that's going to yield better results. But, and then the last thing I was thinking when I was listening to early on in the conversation is, it's kind of like I don't want a very creative brain surgeon. Operations people tend to be linear, tend to be convergent thinkers. And that's what we want because their job is to bring order to the company universe. Whereas salespeople, they have to be divergent thinkers because they have to shift and think on their feet and adjust. And what did that look mean? He just changed his tone of voice. What do I do now? Like there's a bunch of different, it's emotional wizardry. And I think that's where you operate in a certain level of chaos. Right. So order and chaos, we're back to the Jordan Peterson stuff. So anyway, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know if I just contributed anything, but I'm just
I think
kind
the
of
other
riffing.
interesting thing that's really tangential to what you just said, Tip, is what are the people motivated by? We make a huge assumption that all salespeople are motivated by money.
Yes.
Or money is the 90% motivator and everything else is 10%. And I don't think that's always true. And so money, I think, does motivate, but I think you got to understand the individual and what motivates them. And sometimes recognition is a motivator. Sometimes, there are other things that might motivate them, right? Some people are just motivated by winning, right?
Yeah. They might need a pat on the back. They might want some roses and chocolates. It depends on what people want. That's why one of the scariest questions that I encourage my clients to ask, and I am batting 1,000 on this for the people who do, is ask your employees, each employee, in a very open, meaningful, you can't lie about this, okay? If you lie or try to manipulate or trick people, it doesn't work. But ask them what they're committed to in their life.
You just said something that made me, all of you, because I may be generalizing here, but women in the workforce, I would say probably find easier to go into sales than into a lot of other parts of business. And so when you talk about what are they motivated by, women in general are going to have a very different motivation than a hunter male would be. And so they're going to be more interested in softer things that would reward them perhaps than the males would want to do.
I think they could.
I think one of the things that I found when we were doing those kind of assessments and asking that question, that maybe we didn't phrase it the way you did, Tip, but when you asked individual employees, and we did it only at the management level when we were looking at doing sales incentive compensation plans, we asked them, in lieu of money, what other things do you have that would give you a lot of satisfaction, both at the business and in your personal life? So we didn't limit the personal life. We just said personal life. We gave them and we got some interesting feedback. Some of them were more interested in like a vacation or an opportunity for a vacation with family. Others came back and said, well, I'd like to have a commitment to doing something for some community need of involvement. And so that with the business, donate $5,000 to a particular thing that they were very actively concerned about in the community. And so it offered a lot of ideas. But what happened with the ideas is we started circulating it around. And you know what? More people jumped on to making more commitments to the community than wanting just personal rewards, which was a total shock to us because it was not what the owner thought would motivate his people. He was shocked to get that response.
Yep.
Well, a lot of business people are money motivated. I think that's one of the biggest reasons they get into it. And then the assumption that goes along with that is that everybody else is just like them.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, what's one of the biggest risks in hiring? One of the biggest risks in hiring is you hire people who think just like you do.
Correct. Yep.
And then you can't innovate.
Yeah. Yeah. But and the corollary to that tip is if we set up compensation plans that would motivate us, we're going to attract people who are like us.
Exactly.
Because they're going to be right. And so think about that.
Exactly. It's again, I go back to the whole thing of what do you want? And by the way, that question about what are you committed to in your life is just a variation on that same question.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What do you want? Do you want sustainable growth? You know, I mean, do you want an elephant hunter out there? I mean, those are great when they sell, but man, it can take 3 times as long in terms of the typical sales cycle for them to land something.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, there's no better way to snow a small business CEO than to tell them how great it's going to be when they hire you as a salesperson.
Yeah.
They just need a big salary, you see.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? I mean,
yep.
That's the trap, and I see this a lot. What do you need the high salary for? There's another great question that nobody asks. What do you need it for?
Yeah. Oh, we just lost Ed. Interesting. Yeah, all these are great questions. John or Wayne, you want to weigh in a little bit here?
My take on it is I kind of agree with what Chip's saying. I think most owners, I see this with clients. Here's another thought. Most owners that are in this wheelhouse that we work with, when they're ready to find and hire people in a business development capacity, I always find that they're in a state of urgency.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't plan. They did all the shit by themselves for years, and something's happened either on their part or in the organization. An impetus has occurred, and now they've got to frantically go out and find somebody who can bring them work or do this. And my point is, they come to it with the wrong mindset. They're coming from a place of scarcity, not abundance to begin with. And then therefore they don't take the steps that Tip's talking about to find the right person, meets the right Colby profile, blah, blah, blah. They find somebody who, hey, my buddy has said this guy is great, or, anyway. So, and frankly, we all know it's easy to drink the Kool-Aid and be sold when we're in a place of desperation, right? I mean, that's just a bad thing. So that's just an observation that I've always made. And so when we go through our exit plan process and we look at business development as one of the de-risking or value building strategies, we have to have that question around where's the owner at? Where has their sales been? How have they done things traditionally? And are they acting out of a place of desperation because of revenues tanking? Or is this truly a good strategic thing for them to do at the moment? So I think mindset is a big factor in this.
I think that lends to you're going to hire somebody like yourself too then.
Yeah.
Who's just as frantic as you are. Right? I mean, I think that was the key word that you used, and the whole thing you said there, John, was frantic. I mean, I encounter it so much, and that's where I get, the puppy tilt of the head look early on in every engagement is like, okay, gang, do we know what good revenue and bad revenue is? And it's like 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah.
Revenue is revenue. It's all good. It's au contraire. Do you have to discount to get your revenue at certain times of the year? Do you have to discount for certain customer categories? And you know what their answer always is? Of course. Oh, okay. Got it. Right? So how do we sustain gross margin throughout the year if you guys are discounting, always at the same time of year?
Yeah. So, and I think not only that issue of good revenue versus bad revenue, or not so good revenue, and it goes back to, thinking through, what are we really trying to accomplish with our sales group? It's not just revenue. And somebody brought this up earlier. I think that is so, in every company I go into, they haven't thought it through. They're just focused on the top line. And as a result, it's hard to make good sales compensation decisions if you don't know what you want your salesmen and salespeople to do.
Yeah, great point, Wayne. Hey guys, I got to jump off for 2 minutes or 3 minutes to take a quick call. Keep going. I'll be right back. All right.
I think that is such a great question, Wayne. What are we trying to accomplish with our sales revenue? I think that I'm going to use that on Thursday. That's a gem. Because it's so different in terms of how you're teeing it up.
Absolutely.
In terms of the thinking. Yeah. So yeah, and then again, like I said before, I think my next question is what's the sales cycle?
Yep.
And if it depends, well, then in my head I'm processing, well, the compensation structure just got more complicated. So, by the way, how many of you have done work with clients who can't tell you what their top gross margin products or services are? Yeah, right. It's like, hey, let's do me a favor. Let's rank them on a scale 1 to 10. No. Let's make this easier. Let's do it on a scale 1. The number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gross margin products we sell.
At
best,
they can give you a margin across the entire company, and they have no idea by product what's going on.
Right. And then the other thing, Paul, if you go back to Clarity, right? The Clarity software is, and we can prove it.
Yeah.
So then you ask them, well, how do you know that? And then it's like, well, I've been in this business for 31 years. Yeah, and we're working together for a reason. Right? So, gross margin's everything. It's amazing.
This is kind of related. For my company, being a consultant, I just basically run on cash. I don't do accrual stuff. But when I get into the CPA world and I have a big sale, but I can only recognize a portion of it. Let's say it's a 3-year subscription or something, and all I can recognize at most is 1 year of the subscription as current stuff. And maybe the CPA is even going to push me to only recognizing 1 month of stuff, even if maybe I offer a monthly fee or I offer an annual fee. Maybe all I'm allowed by the CPA to recognize is 1 month. Do you see that? And then how does that factor into the compensation, what the CPA's rules are for recognizing the revenue?
Yeah. I think revenue recognition and how you get paid obviously are two different things. I might pay the full commission or the 60-40 split, even if somebody is, if I got paid for the whole year, but I can only recognize some of it revenue wise, I could still pay the commission on it because I got the cash, right? So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, Paul, because I see your look.
Well, because you said I've got the cash. Okay. So if I'm buying a piece of software and I choose the annual fee, Yeah, I've got the full cash in my balance sheet somewhere.
Correct.
I don't have it on my profit loss statement, but I've got it in the on the
Right.
balance sheet. Okay.
Yeah. So my rule for paying out commissions is I got to have the cash in my bank account. Right.
Okay.
I'm not going to pay them until we've been paid. The recognition of the revenue might come over the current. Like I got it I sold the whole year of subscription in January. I only get to recognize January's revenue in January, but I'm going to recognize the rest of the revenue all year. I already have the cash.
Yeah.
I'm going to recognize the revenue.
So you got great cash flow, you got money on the balance sheet, but you got a loss on the income statement because you paid that huge commission up front.
Yeah, again, cash basis. I paid the commission, but I would recognize the commission over the course of the recognition of the revenue. I would match them.
Oh, that's what a CPA would do. He moves the commission.
That's what this CPA would do. The cost of sales, cost and revenue need to match. So if I'm going to recognize the revenue over the year, I'm going to recognize the expense related to that revenue over the year. Cash that happens, I get all the cash at the start. I pay out all the commission at the start. The cash can be completely different than how I recognize it on an accrual basis from a GAAP standpoint.
And now I don't know if you guys run into this, but a lot of people that I work with on the free side don't have any money, lacking money, and the only thing they can offer is future money called equity in the company that might get sold someday in the future. Any experience with that? Any advice there?
The thing I always say to people is equity is the most expensive thing you can give to people, right? Like you think it's cheap right now because you don't have to go to the bank and pay interest on it. You think it's cheap, but I had a client. I have a client. 24 months ago, they were not doing well. They had made some poor decisions. I was helping them dig out of those poor decisions. The owner came to me and said, I got this guy who wants to buy 30% of my company. And I said, yeah, but you're selling it at dirt cheap because the company's not worth a whole lot right now. And in 18 to 20, we're already on the way up. We've done all the hard work. Now we just need to put our head down and, climb the mountain a step at a time. It's not that hard anymore. We've done all the really rigorous stuff. We just got to take a step each day. And when we look up in 18 months, we're going to be fine. I talked him off that ledge, and 18 months later, the company's worth something. We're making good money. We've grown ourselves. We got ourselves out of the hole, and we would have been, to buy that 30% back, we would have paid 10 times what we would have given it away for.
Right. That's a little bit different because the person there was going to pay for the equity.
Yep.
What I'm running into with some of the startups is, okay, I need an IP attorney. Well, the IP attorney will get paid with 15% equity in the company.
Yep.
You're shaking your head no, Tim.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
That's what startups do. You need
It
a
is what startups
CTO,
do.
and you give the CTO 30% equity in the company.
Magic. It's magic. It's monopoly money.
Yeah. I mean, if you're serious, go out and raise some money and go raise some money and have a budget and then pay people out of it.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not serious, then bootstrap and get it done the way you need to get it done to get going. People can do whatever they want, right? I wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah,
I'm
I think
surprised
part
how
of
hard
it
it is to raise money right now.
There's a lot of money out there. It's
is.
hard because you got to find the right people and you got to have real substantial, you got to lay out the business plan and you got to have real meat to be able to show people why your idea is successful and why it's going to work. Right? That's hard work. but it's a lot easier just to promise stuff you don't have.
What were you going to say, John?
Well, I was going to say, it's just, we're talking about people that are in a state of desperation again, right? I mean, it goes to mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a group, we just need to have a creed that says we can't work with people that are in a desperate mindset. You can help them, you can assist them, but they're not ready to engage anybody in that mindset. I mean, even when I was a lawyer, I used to do startup work for many years. That's how I got started. And that's early 90s, and way back when the world was different and nobody talked about giving away equity. But, my point is you just kind of have to figure out who's truly going to be viable, who's not. To Eric's point, that's maybe one of the things we can suggest to them. How do you find startup capital? And, are you capital worthy? And if you're not, then back to the drawing room you go, and you got to work more on your product or more on your business model. I think as advisors, it's kind of incumbent upon us to do that, right? I mean, I do that. I know people who do that too. In fact, as a lawyer, it was always shameful and somewhat non-ethical to do that, to take equity from an owner knowing that they're just desperate. So anyways,
Right.
that's my take on it.
It's interesting too that people don't understand. When Paul, I understand your point, but my point is a little bit tangential. But people don't understand the value of that equity, right? So I having a side conversation with a prospect. Yeah, we're in talking to him about helping him, and he goes, maybe I'll just go out and get somebody to invest in my company. They'll give me $1 million for 10%. I'll give them 10% for $1 million. I said, so your business is worth $10 million? And he said, what? Right? Like they're not thinking about, right? On the one hand, they need $1 million and they're only willing to give 10% away, right? And they're not thinking about the relationship between those two numbers, right? On the other hand, what John was saying, what you were asking, the question, what Tip was saying, they're often in that desperation standpoint, and they're just trying to get money so they can stay alive, right, as a company, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're trying to come up with ways to do it, and in that desperation, they're not thinking clearly about the right way to structure it or how it could play out, right? At some point, they could give away control of the company.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've seen that actually happen. We've seen people get forced out as they were the founder. They now have a minority interest, and then they're forced out as the CEO or whatever because somebody else has controlling interest and they don't like them anymore, or they have a different path or whatever, right? And so it's a dangerous game to play, honestly, if you've got a great idea and it's worth something. On the other hand, I mean, I do understand it. You've got this great idea and you're trying to get it to market quickly, and some ideas do have a lifespan on them, right? Like they're not going to be great ideas for 20 years. You need to get to the market now, right? So those are tough things. You're back.
I got lightninged out.
Oh,
Lightning and internet all came bang, and everything went black in the house.
Well, at least it came back fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think those are really interesting. We were talking, Ed, about how startup companies often give away equity as a way to pay people or as a way to engage people, and you're shaking your head just like we were, right? Like they're just not a smart. But John made a great point about it's in desperation, but also they just don't know how to get the money they need, right? They haven't done the hard work to prepare themselves and understand things.
John, you probably hit it right on the head, and that is everybody thinks they have to go give it away. I always say phantom. So much better, because that way you can still make decisions without having to have a cohort of people together that may not completely understand mission and direction.
Yeah, I happen to like stock appreciation rights.
Yeah,
Instead of giving them the core of it, give them, let them participate in the growth of it, right? And win alongside you. Again, back to our compensation discussion on salespeople. Incent people on what you want them to do. You want them to grow the value. My rule of thumb is if you're getting true equity, you're paying me something because it's worth something. If it ain't worth something, what am I doing with it anyway? Right. If I'm giving you something, I'm giving you stock appreciation rights, which are worth nothing right now, and they'll be worth something more if you help me grow it. Right.
Exactly. I think mature startups, individuals set out charts to show where we are on target towards a goal. My son, who is in recruiting, he puts the target up each year, whatever their target is, if it's 5.5 or 7 million, whatever number it is, he says, here's the target for the month. Let's not worry about the year. Let's worry about this month. That is what it is, because we can't worry about 12 months from now. We can only work it in the next 30 days. And that's the work that you're going to do this month that's going to cause that 30-day number to react.
It also keeps people more accountable and more in the moment of actually doing this went back to our sales discussion that we want to incent the right activity. I can't remember, John, if you said it or Tip. I think it was you, Tip, that said it, right? We want to incent the right activity that's going on, right? And so if you're in startup mode and you're trying to get where you're going to go, you should have a plan that includes what the goal is, but what are the steps, like any good plan, what are the milestones I need to get to? Right. And you're working towards each of those milestones so they build on each other, and you can measure if you need to change. It's like agile leadership right now. Do I need to change? Am I on the right path right now, or do I need to change now? Right. Mm-hmm. If I'm waiting until the ultimate goal to find out whether I'm successful or not, then it's a cliff, right? I'm waiting until I get to the edge, and I either jump or I don't jump.
Right.
Yeah. I think there has to be accountability too. Like people have to, in that tough environment, people have to perform or they have to go. You can't afford extra people on the team who aren't pulling their weight. And you have, and there has to be true risk for them, not just their job, but maybe the appreciation rights are at risk also if you're not doing your job.
Exactly. I think that's a case that we're working on last summer. We hit the nail on the head when we said the sales department is sitting in the office waiting for the next order when the phone calls off, and he's got two people compensated as sales manager. And neither one of them was getting any effort to get out. As soon as I took over sales leadership and got them to have to go out and be accountable. Well, one of them decided he was going to quit because he didn't want to have any accountability of his time. And he had been there like 15 years, and the first time anybody held him accountable for what he was doing. And the other guy decided that he wanted to just run to all of his old accounts when he was at a competitor and start to get them to become clients. And when he did it, in one quarter, he made more sales of new customers than he had done in the prior year and a half that he was there.
Yep.
Just because we got him out. And you hit it on the head. There's got to be something to get them.
Sales is the easiest department to have accountability in, because you're either getting it done or you're not.
It's like sports.
Yeah, and I joked with them, and when they decided they didn't need to do our system and implement it for the whole company, they've been doing 40 million for 5 years. The comment, how much are they going to do this year? I bet you they'll do 38 million this year, because everybody's cruising and there's nobody driving.
Yep. That's not unusual.
Oh, I know.
There's lots of those out there.
We're waiting for the day when the owner truly does have that serious health issue that says you can't come in for a month.
Yeah.
He had one that caused him to miss 2 days for the first time in his life.
Yep.
You know the other one's going to come because he just turned 60.
Yeah.
But he started this thing from scratch, and he's been there 40 years doing this thing. And he's doing the same thing that he did 40 years ago, which is every freaking job in the company he runs.
Yep.
And he could do it better than everybody that's there.
Yep. And you're going to attract a certain type of person to that, and you're going to cap out at a certain level, because at some point the tree outgrows how much you can put your arms around it, right?
That's exactly the case. And ironically, the competitor approached us about wanting to work with them, not knowing we even had worked with the other gentleman.
Yep.
Said, we're trying to grow into Columbus market, and we'd like to get to be 80 million in this market. We thought, yeah, that's what we think it should have been all the time.
Yep. Wow.
You know, another
Wow.
thing that just drives me bananas is when owners, or I don't know, you pick whoever it is at the top, when they take their sales number that they want for the year and then they raise it by 10 or 20%, and that's what they tell their sales team. I just think it is such a unique, it's such a grotesque form of lying to people. You're not giving a chance to win. You're basically like saying, well, on our basketball team, the bucket is 12 feet high, not 10 feet high.
Right.
Because we know that that's what makes better players. And that's just such a lie, and it's out of integrity. And, you know, especially if you're on a quota system where compensation is handled differently if you hit your quota, that's messing with somebody's livelihood. It drives me bananas.
Yeah.
I can't work with people like that.
Yeah, again, I think that goes to flippancy, right? We flippantly set a compensation plan to incent people, and then it starts working and they start making a lot of money, and all of a sudden some sales guy is making more than the CEO, and the CEO gets pissed and says, well, I'm changing his comp plan. He can't out earn me, right? Instead of saying, great, he's making a lot of money. It means that we're getting a lot of sales, right? And that's going to be good, right? So, yeah, agreed.
Yeah. I mean, and where is that salesperson making more than you as CEO? I'd assume
Because
we're
you have
talking
the
about a
equity
private
growth.
company, right?
Yeah, you have the
If we're
equity.
talking about a private company, then by nature, it's going to come back to you. If you're paying yourself a pittance and the salesperson's making so much money, then who's responsible for that?
Yeah, correct. And what do you know, maybe their compensation is higher, but is it higher when you take into account your distributions and the growth in equity
That's what
of
I
the
mean.
business? Right.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean. I mean, you know, it's like at a car dealership. You know, when the salesperson makes more than the sales manager, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Right. You know, one thing that I always talk to clients about a lot is that they've got the sales leader thing totally ass backward. So what they do is they take their best salesperson who's reached a certain age and say, you're the sales leader now.
Yeah.
What you're really looking for, think about a football team. You do not want your head coach running the offense, and you don't want your quarterback running the offense. You want an offensive coordinator. It's just not the best use of their talent to have them there. So one thing I talk about with a lot of companies, especially that have larger sales teams, is you need somebody as a sales leader who's crazy about process, great with people and accountability, and has some kind of a sales background somewhere in their past where they can understand and appreciate the risk and the reward side of what sales is involved in.
Yeah.
And that's, I tell them, don't hire a sales manager, hire an offensive coordinator. You're not looking for paying a head coach level, and you don't want your best player in the field wearing a headset telling the offense what to do.
Yeah.
That's one I've never really understood why that's such a vexing.
It's a natural thing. We
is.
always take our best person in the department and promote them to the manager in every department.
It's insane.
Right.
It's insane. Are they wired for the work?
It's a different skill set too, right?
Yeah.
Used to be called the Peter principle. Thank goodness it wasn't the Paul principle.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Or the Mary principle.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's so typical that many organizations default to the older person to get promoted when that's the last person that probably should get promoted, because you got to have something that's someone coming in that's not born into the way it's always been, but instead is looking at how could it be more effective.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yep. Hey, we're 24 after. Let's go around with key takeaways, just so we sort of wrap up on time. What are some key takeaways? Paul, you want to start us out?
Oh, I started this by talking about a book and learned a whole lot. There are resources out there. There's 3 classes somewhere, 3 semesters worth of compensation planning of all sorts.
Books
We went
written on compensation.
beyond compensation for salespeople to compensation for the CEO, compensation for outside contractors and investors, and got into the values and dividends, all kinds of things. So there's a hell of a lot in the subject of compensation, making sure you incentivize the right behaviors, and to tips things, what is it you're trying to accomplish with your revenue? So I will pass to Mr. Carter.
Well, it's, you never know what you're going to get on these calls, right? It's kind of like a box of chocolates. No, I appreciate all this topic around what I think is one of the most intangible, important parts of business, which is how do you divide the wealth, right? How do you motivate? How do you retain? What's fair? What's equitable? It's a fascinating black science. And there are some key, to Tip's point, there's some really key principles that we have to keep in mind and try to help people with, but it's always a fascinating concept. I grew up with a father who had his own business. My grandfather worked at Ford Motor Company. I mean, so my whole life, I grew up hearing about wages and salaries and benefits and bonuses and money and blah, blah, blah. And it's just interesting how it's also changed. Another interesting thing is I think about, my kids now who are entering the workforce. Currency is a total different concept than it was 10, 15 years ago, or when we started into it. So, it's funny, the concept of money is critical, but the younger gen, they're less about what my salary is and they're more about what my opportunities are and how can you help me and this and that. And so as owners, we have to be creative, right? If we're not creative thinking about new ways of incentivizing people, I think we're in deep doo-doo. So anyways, that's my takeaway for the morning.
Who are you giving it to, John?
We'll go back to you, Eric. Why not?
All right. Sounds good. My favorite thing in the whole conversation was, Tip, your comment about go to owners and ask them to talk to their employees about what do they really want, right? I think it goes to your comment you just made, John, that generationally, as only one way to slice this whole thing, there are different perceptions generationally, not to mention individually interests and all that, but just bigger buckets. That's a great example of generations don't look at money the same way, generally speaking, right? And so to make the assumption that everybody's going to think about it like me is a bad assumption, right? And so I love that Tip. So I'm going to throw it to Tip.
What Wayne offered, what are we trying to accomplish with our sales revenue? I just thought was great. And just this whole conversation makes me think of, that question, what are you committed to in your life? If you can find out what they're committed to in their life and you can align your business goals with their goals, the manipulation side of management vaporizes because they're getting what they want, you're getting what you want, and everybody wins. And, from the case I did a couple of weeks ago with the study group is, it's, I think a lot of people kind of arrive at this certain age where they're tired and they want to sell their business, and all they're interested in is what they're going to get. And they're not focused on what they have to give.
Yeah.
And, it's a real trap. And the same thing goes with compensation. So I'll pass it to Ed.
The final say.
I think you made a great comment with that. What are you committed to? Last night I had a chance to be with my granddaughter and her husband, and her husband's a remote CFO, and obviously controllers don't necessarily have giant ranges of compensation opportunities or incentives. And what their company did was they were building a new warehouse, and so he and the chief operating officer and the owner are now 1/3 partners in this new warehouse that they have.
Wow.
Because that's the way to get him compensation, and he's not competing with other employees in the business, as they just went from 18 million in revenue that they're projecting that they're going to have 28 million in this year. And so they can't adjust his pay in that kind of magnitude because his job didn't change much. All he did was had to put more financing in place. So it was a neat way to give him compensation that met what he needed. He didn't need more cash. He needed futures.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very entrepreneurial. Wow, what a great story.
Yeah. That's awesome.
If we look at it, I'm sure, Tip, when you look at it, you say, what did it do? It got him to be wanting to be there. He's not going to jump because he's got a reason that he's got an equity piece of something like this.
That's right.
On the other side, he's also now got something that's going to be a play for the future of the business, whatever goes on. And because he's thinking that they can get to probably 40 to 50 million because they want to do one more round of expansion, and he's got 3 or 4 options of how they can do it, and he's working on them right now, putting pro formas on each one of the opportunities.
It's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. Nice. Guys, great meeting again. Great conversation. Paul, I knew you'd come through with a great topic to start, and who knew you could start it with a sales book and we could go where we went. But
Right.
Awesome conversation, guys.
Okay.
Take care,
I want to
everybody.
point out, though, that Ed, he gave away equity.
Everybody's at risk for the equity, though.
Yeah. All right.
Better to
Take
have
care,
equity
everybody.
in something than nothing, right?
Yeah.
You got it.
Big
All right,
guy.
guys. Thanks so very much. It was Eric. Good job. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.